I was doing my PhD thesis in Ethiopia about the fascist adventure in 1936 at Sciences Po Paris. I interviewed old fascist men at the time that they were 80 years old, 85, 90 years old, and they were still living in Ethiopia in the late 80s. This thesis was based on oral history with these colonial Italians. They explained to me the nature of the relation they had with local girls. The subject became two important chapters of my thesis. They explained their dominant positions as masters. They were ruling Ethiopia. And they used to hide their relation with local women because it was forbidden by the fascist regime. So the relations were illegal. But most of Italian men kept their Ethiopian lovers as maids, servants, or sex slaves. More rarely, certain men adopted young girls as daughters and raped them. I wrote an article about this that you can find. Gender and sexual abuses during the Italian colonization in Ethiopia. This is a picture when I was doing field research with this Italian man, colonial man, called insabbiati in Italian. Even so, I detail in 1989 the inequalities of a dominant white colonial male group and the myriad of abuses they made on young Ethiopian girls. My research director at the time, a well-known historian, did not encourage me to name it by its proper name, pedophilia. Pedophilia was what I've observed in Ethiopia and what my interviews were pointing. Women's studies and gender studies were not famous and were not granted any academic legitimacy during the 80s, especially in France, I must tell. So I had to adopt a euphemistic style for reporting my observations regarding colonial pedophilia, nudity, and the search of pornography of Italian colonial soldiers in Eritrea and Ethiopia. This is an Eritrean woman fighters that I shot during the 90s. So I think these colonial images highly impacted my way of filming women. I wanted to restore a dignity that was taken away from them during the colonial time. So I had never asked any woman to be filmed without clothes, understanding that nudity was a way to steal their dignity. Their bodies were taken like objects during Italian colonial time. In that perspective, women in my films are the one who decides everything, what to show, how to show, when to show. They were the absolute deciders of the image they wanted to offer to the world. I followed this unconscious rule of mine in Africa, in India, everywhere. This is an Eritrean woman, a postcard that the Italians were exchanging during the colonial time. Look at her look. Look at her eyes. Look how sad she is. She is an object and she doesn't want to be one. Her look, her outlook, her eyes is showing very clearly that she is humiliated. She has a cross showing that she is a Christian. And this is the way I lately film women. I film their hair, their jewelry. In India, I filmed Muslim Manganiyar women in the Thar desert who could not show their faces without risking to become outcasts and be rejected from their families. I filmed the woman's hair, their jewelry, hands, feet. There is a myriad of ways of suggesting a presence without insisting on face.